Hello, and welcome back to Aetheral Space 11.4, Elysian Fields and the Flying Tartarus. We are back. Hello.
It's so good to be back here in Elysian Fields.
And the Flying Tartarus.
And the Flying Tartarus. Tartarus like that prison in Greek mythology?
Yeah, the underworld.
Yeah, but why is this one flying? It's supposed to be under the world? Sigh. Another author who doesn't do his research. Oh, man. In Aether News, Tanhoney put an ad.
For a long time, we've got like Aether News.
Yeah. Well, you got an ad out for Aetheral Space on Royal Road. I'm very excited.
But hopefully we can get some eyes on the story.
Yeah. I think it's going to be pretty awesome when it's out.
There's also the website we have for Aetheral Space. Right now, it's just a mirror of what's on Royal Road, but maybe in the future, maybe something a bit
There's
more.
There's a couple things. There's like links. I think it'd be cool if you had like an art section with like, assuming you get permission from artists who've done fan art to like put stuff in there, and you could put your own drawings in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think it would be cool if, I don't know if you can do it on WordPress, but if you had a place where people can like do discussion forums.
I don't think forums are a functionality, but
yeah, I think that would be like its own website. But I think it's a step in the right direction. All it's missing now is the Patreon link, Smile.
Mm.
I think there's 3 sections that need to be added here if we're serious about taking Aether all the way, right? It's the art section, it's the Patreon, which needs to go up, and it's the Aether trailer that we've all been waiting for.
Everyone
will need a link.
Waiting for it.
Remember when you said we would get it when Arc 3 was done?
I don't remember that. That was so long ago. Smile.
Well, we're not here to talk about broken promises and broken dreams. We're here to talk about the bright future and what Skipper has in store for everybody. So let's see what's going on with our dear friends in Aetheral Space 11.4, Elysian Fields and the Flying Tartarus. Before we begin, let me tell you a little something about Regiment Red. They are killers. Now, let me tell you a little more about them. Is this like first person?
Yeah, we've done this a couple of times.
The Supremacy has faced many enemies over its lifetime. The Great Chain, the Final Church, the Unified Alliance of Planets, Darkstar. But none have been quite as persistent or quite as irritating as Regiment Red. While the damage they are capable of inflicting may not match those of other Titans, they have no lack of ferocity. Their leader, Klaus L., was once a member of the Supreme Guard. Nobody knows the specific cause of his desertion, or at least nobody's telling, but it's believed to be one of the reasons for the dissolution of the Guard in place of the Contender system. It's been nearly 60 years since then, and Klaus L. has not stopped for a breath since. Was he friends with Skipper?
Yeah,
I know he was in...
Flashback.
I know he was in the flashback, but were they like close?
They were like friends, yeah.
They recruit from those smashed underfoot by the Supremacy machine. That is to say, those that have a burning hatred for the Supremacy as a whole. Through grueling training, that hatred is tempered into a flame that they hope can incinerate the object of their ire. Each member of Regiment Red, regardless of rank, is a honed warrior, and in most cases, a capable Aether user as well. Assassinations, kidnappings, torture, chemical warfare, public bombings. There is no tactic that Regiment Red will not adopt. In order to fight against the Supremacy, they have not hesitated to make monsters of themselves. It is said that Klaus L. is the worst of them, willing to unleash the kinds of powers that reduce a battlefield to rot without hesitation, very scorched earth.
Now,
a forest fire... Scarlet rot. A forest fire must annihilate... If you think about it, Klaus L. Was a former member of the Guard, so thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service, Klaus. A forest fire must annihilate indiscriminately. That is their philosophy. It's the task of the rain that comes afterwards to clean up the damage. Although they've been quiet for nearly a decade now, their infrequent raids on military bases for supplies make them a persistent thorn in the Supremacy side. Klaus L. himself has one of the highest bounties in the history of the system. That said, though, there are rumors among those that hunt Klaus that he works with another, that he has a partner. Who that partner might be, though, nobody can say. The Slipstream AE set down on a landing pad right on the edge of the base, thrusters still red-hot after they deactivated. They'd pushed the ship to its limits getting here so fast. To be honest, Dragon was surprised that they'd made it. As they descended the landing ramp, automatics had already gathered to begin repairing and refueling the vessel. Dragon looked past the bustling machines to the landscape that spread out before them. Green ground and blue skies with a yellow sun hanging high above. Mountains dotted the horizon, and past the grassland they were on now, Dragon could spy a forest of massive trees. He found himself reminded of how things had been on Yazlaf all that time ago. The building before them didn't much help with those comparisons either. It was a massive pyramid, the size of a skyscraper, composed of metal made dull by time and covered in intricate and esoteric carvings. Gene-tyrant archaeology if he'd ever seen it. Parts of the structure had seemed to collapse over time, and had been repaired with box-like outcroppings that clashed heavily with the rest of the building. "So," Dragon muttered as they reached the bottom of the ramp, "Elysian fields, huh?" Skipper paused next to him. His ruined arm was held in a sling, and they'd done all they could for his injuries, but his face was still pale. Whether that was from his wounds or the situation in general, Dragon couldn't say. "Yep," he said quietly, eyes flicking around. "Last stop on our galactic tour, yeah? Hell of a sight. One of the last battles of the Revolution happened here, you know." "I remember," Dragon nodded. Ruth cleared her throat, arms crossed as she glanced at Skipper nervously. "Hey, can we talk about that message you sent out?" Skipper shrugged, once again lopsided, but this time in the opposite direction. "What's there to talk about?" She rubbed the back of her neck. "Well, we'd gotten away, hadn't we? Why'd you tell them where we were going? I don't get it." Dragon understood it perfectly well. Just like Skipper had said, this was the last stop. For his plan to work, he needed the Supreme to come to him. Just from looking at the older man, Dragon could tell. Skipper had no plans that came after this. This was the culmination of it all. Skipper grinned, but there was no reassurance in it. "Trust me," he said, tapping his temple with a metal finger. "I've got some stuff going on up here." Bruno finally descended the ramp as well, cracking his shoulders. Presumably he'd been checking the ship's systems. His face remained his own, but Serena spoke out of the mouth. "Some stuff?" she asked. "Like what stuff, Mr. Skipper? Bruno's kind of nervous." "I'm not nervous," Bruno quickly cut in. He is, Mr. Skipper, because it kind of seems like we're F-U-C-K-D... whoops. You know?" Skipper put his good hand to his hip. "I have a plan," he sighed. "Have a little faith. Have a little faith." I'm doing like kind of the quiet, understated version of his voice, because I assume he's like it going through it.
Yeah.
"Then tell us," Dragon promoted. "All in good time." Dragon spread his arms wide. "We're on the fucking planet, Skipper! There isn't any more time! Are you seriously just winging this?" Skipper looked down at him, and the look in his eyes was dark. Not angry, not threatening. But there was something there, all the same. "You misunderstand me, kid," he said quietly. "What I'm saying is that I hate repeating myself. I want to tell everyone all at once." His eyes flicked up, and Dragon followed his gaze, to the small entourage making their way over. 2 men, flanked by soldiers wearing the signature scarlet balaclava of the Regiment Red. The first was walking with the assistance of a walking cane, and, to put it bluntly, looked like he'd suffered every kind of injury possible at least once. One eye stared keenly at them, while the other was missing entirely, with no effort made to conceal the empty socket. The second, younger, had gray hair, natural it seemed, not caused by age, tied back into a severe ponytail, and strange scars marking his lips. One of his arms, a prosthetic, clearly was much bigger than the other, with the barrel of a rifle sticking out the end. Dragon furrowed his brow as he looked at the older man. Something about him seemed familiar, but it took a moment for him to place the face. Time and cruelty had taken their toll, but he had seen this man before, when he was going through Skipper's memories back on the Eliza. This man was Klaus, Skipper's old friend from the Supreme Guard. They'd never actually mentioned what had happened to him, so Dragon supposed it was no surprise he was still looking about somewhere. "You look like shit," Skipper called out as Klaus approached. Klaus's walking cane thumped down onto the concrete of the landing pad. He didn't reply straight away. Instead, he silently observed the group. As his good eye settled on Dragon's face, He couldn't help but feel like he was under a searchlight. "This is him," Klaus said, voice tortured into a rasp on the way out of his throat. "Your coadjutant?" "Yep," Skipper replied. Klaus's eye lazily moved over to Skipper. "And the rest?" Skipper grinned. "Got some folks on their way. Plus, you should have already gotten the automatics we talked about. Everything up and running?" "Didn't leave us much time," Klaus grumbled. "But yes, the hangman will be ready for whatever they throw at it. All we have to worry about is the pilot." Wait! There's an arcana this important into the plot? Oh, shit! Dragon's eyes flicked from face to face. The conversation was moving so quickly that he barely had a chance to interrupt. Eventually, though, his chance did come. "Sorry," he said, right before Skipper could open his mouth again. "I don't want to be a dick, but I just want to make sure I've got everything right here. We know the Supremacy's on their way, right? We made them be on their way here. There is a plan beyond just waiting for them, isn't there?" Skipper raised an eyebrow. "You never heard of a siege before, kid?" Dragon glared. "Usually there are walls involved in a siege. What's to stop the Supremacy from just bombarding us from orbit?" For the first time in a good while, that old twinkle returned to Skipper's eye. "Let me show you." The heart of the pyramid was the polar opposite of the sense of light and freedom outside. The place was dark and dim, corridors eerily small and short, requiring people to walk single file to move in a group. Rust crawled over the walls, hastily repaired with new material, and a chemical stench lingered in the air. Eventually, though, they reached an elevator, wide enough to house all of their group as it descended. Dragon glanced at the assembly out of the corner of his eye as long minutes passed. Klaus L. Dragon recognized him from Skipper's memories, but who was the Umbrant with him? A bodyguard? Or someone higher up in the organization? Dragon couldn't imagine he'd heard of him before and forgot. That scarred face was one that tended to stick in the mind. Bruno, spotting the direction of Dragon's gaze, saddled up next to him. "I know that guy. That's Johann Blackbird," he whispered conspiratorially. "He's meant to be a simple bounty hunter, but people have always suspected ties to Regiment Red. Guess they were right." Dragon frowned. "How come you're an encyclopedia all of a sudden?" "We used to work for the UAP," Bruno shrugged. "We'd get briefings on all the major groups in the Supremacy, including these guys." Major? Dragon didn't know about that. Until Skipper had mentioned the name on their way in, he'd never even heard of these people. Apparently, they'd been dormant for quite some time, though. Waiting for Skipper's plan to come together, maybe? "Your people are gossips, Esmeralda," Johann suddenly spoke up, his voice a harsh monotone. "These are the best you could get? Pathetic." Even as he talked, he continued to face forward, expression impassive. "Hey!" Ruth barked with surprising firmness. "Watch your mouth!" Hey, it's okay." Skipper narrowed his eyes as he patted Ruth on the shoulder. "The name's Skipper, Blackbird, in case you forgot. I get what you're saying, though. It's so damn loud. For some reason, people can't help but talk when they see your mug. It's crazy, huh?" For the first time, Johann turned his head to face Skipper, growling angrily in that strange, scurrant double voice. He took a step forward. Is that common for Skirrants to have double voices?
Yeah, they have, the Polpo voice.
Interesting. Fantastic. They were somehow going to start a fight before the Supremacy even got here. Dragon cleared his throat, voice echoing through the elevator shaft. "So," he said, "where exactly are we going?" Klaus glanced at Johann, and that was enough for the angry man to return to his original position. As he did so, I assume, though, his long coat swished
through the air. I don't know how that resulted.
I fixed your so, too. As he did so, though, his long coat swished through the air, and Dragon got a better look at that rifle on his arm. It was strange-looking, more antique than mechanical, with a distinct silver shine to the tip of the barrel. An Aether armament, maybe? Before Dragon could look closer, however, he found that Klaus had turned towards him. The old man had the kind of gaze that made you want to stand at attention, or perhaps drop into a hole in the ground. "We're headed below," he croaked, thumping his cane against the floor. "Before the gene tyrant that occupied this planet was killed, it created a device that wasn't enough to save it, but one that should give us the edge we need." "Right," Dragon nodded. "The one you need cogitants to activate, correct?" Johann snorted. See, no sense of Oh, that's Johann, whoops. See, no sense of secrecy, he said, but quietly, so as to not get another glare from Klaus. He never told us what it is, though, Dragon pressed on. He just said it's a device, and like you said, that it would give us an edge. What kind of device? What kind of edge? Klaus's eye flicked to Skipper. You started telling them, he said plainly. You might as well finish. Skipper shuffled awkwardly on the spot. I can do a different voice.
I love it.
Skipper shuffled awkwardly on the spot before speaking. It seemed he hadn't quite expected Klaus to call upon him. Well, he said, well, you get down to it. The device we're heading down to is a kind of shield, I guess. One that can wrap around the entire planet. What? Dragon frowned. Like an energy barrier? Nah, Skipper shook his head. This planet's got some funky stuff going on with the atmosphere. The device manipulates that. It creates these crystalline clouds, sharp enough to slice through steel, all around the planet. Anything trying to get through the shield that meets the criteria, well, it gets obliterated. And what's the criteria? Dragon asked. It's a shield that rejects structure. Oh, fuck me! Fuck you! You tricked me. It's a shield that rejects structures.
Do you like my impression?
Not structures as in physical objects, but the way things are organized. The way a warband moves. Its hierarchy. Its methods of attack. Sorry, The shield gets a sense for these things and strikes back at them instantly. Things clicked. So what? You're going to make the shield reject the supremacy? Skipper clicked his fingers. Exactamundo. As the elevator platform rattled a little, Ruth scratched her head. Wait, I don't get how that helps. Doesn't that just mean we'd be stuck here with no way to get out, with the supremacy army surrounding us? That sounds like a shit plan. No offense. Over in the corner, Johann rolled his eyes again at the interruption. It went ignored. Skipper plunged his hands into his pockets. Ordinarily, that'd be true, he smiled. But there's one way to get around the shield. It detects organizational structures. So if people go through the shield, through the atmosphere, one at a time, there's no problem. He turned to look back at them, green eyes glimmering in the light. If the Supreme knows I'm down here, he won't be able to resist, he said. That army's coming down single file. I think that gives us a pretty big edge, don't you? The elevator cleared a threshold, and the tunnel of rock around them was suddenly replaced by a massive cavern. Not for the first time. Dragon's eyes widened. It didn't take a genius to spot the device. It took up most of the cavern, after all, a massive and perfect sphere with strange patterns of green and blue smoke drifting across its surface. A constant sound, a buzzing, emanated from it, loud and persistent enough that Dragon could feel it in his bones. No matter how hard he looked, Dragon couldn't see any supports for the structure, but he could see several bridges connecting to the sphere from the surrounding caves, presumably leading inside. The sensation of looking at it was difficult to describe, but if Dragon had to say, it was like he was looking at something plucked out of the imagination. The only thing, though, is it's planet-sized, right?
The shield, yeah.
They're on a planet. So, right, but they're on a planet, so I'm guessing their idea is, we have all the red guys here plus us, we can take them one at a time, but what's to stop them from landing somewhere else on the planet, and then, like, the next person enters, and then they all conglomerate on their location later?
Then we'll get into this.
Okay. No matter how hard he looked, Dragon couldn't see any physical supports for the structure, but he could... Oh, I already read that. The sensation of looking at it was difficult to describe, but if Dragon had to say, it was like he was looking at something plucked out of the imagination. We call it the Lotus, Skipper said, blue and green light running over his face. Taking on the supremacy one guy at a time. I think that gives us a pretty good chance, yeah? For the Lotus to work, Klaus concluded, rubbing his scraggly chin, we need to teach you what the supremacy is, so that it might reject it. That is what we brought you cogitants here for. From all over the supremacy, from different parts of the society, to map out the whole. So, Skipper grinned, ready to help us kill a god? When Atoy Muzazi had arrived on the Tartarus, the Ascendant General's personal cruiser, he'd expected something of a stern atmosphere. A known dissident had somehow managed to hijack all Supremacy communications, after all, if only briefly. Commissioner Caesar had sent out a general summons here to all special officers not currently on a mission, after all. This was a serious matter. He hadn't expected this. Perhaps he should have. "Wow! Wow!" said Winston Grace, circling Muzazi in the manner of a particularly intrusive shark. "I can't believe how long it's been, Atoy! How long has it been?" He'd caught them in the main hangar minutes after they'd landed, before Muzazi could even sign in. The ship was massive, and more special officers were arriving all the time, so his absence wouldn't be noted. But still, it was the principle of the thing. Sorry, just need a quick drink. "Some months," Muzazi said firmly, offering a sympathetic glance to Morgan, who was standing behind him. Morgan?
Yeah.
Who was Morgan again?
Morgan Knox. You know Morgan.
Oh, I'm stupid. Sorry.
He was in the last arc. He was quite a major character.
I know, but I'm so used to him being called by his full name. I got confused. "It's good to see you, Winston." He was telling the truth. It was good to see Winston. It pained his heart when he thought back to Nocturnus, to being with Marie there. But they'd worked well with Winston at the time. Without his help, it was doubtful they would have achieved any measure of success there. At the end of all that, he'd hoped, even just a little bit, that Winston would have joined their crew. But things hadn't turned out that way. And so soon after that, Marie had died. Apparently, he'd been part of the investigation into the battle on the Child Garden, but Muzazi hadn't had the chance to meet with him then. That had been somewhat saddening. Yes, he was fairly fond of Winston Grace. Muzazi tried to tell himself that, as Winston carefreely pushed past him, switching his focus instead to Morgan as he looked the man up and down. "I've seen pictures of you before," Winston said quickly, without so much as a hello. "Videographs, too. But you look a little different from those right now. Paler? No, not just that." Without warning, he reached out and grabbed Morgan's hand, pulling it up and inspecting his wrist. "Slight greenish tinge to the veins, which intensified slightly as I noticed it. Intensified again as I made it known that I noticed. A sapient presence, then? I was wondering where Ioneer Yggdrasil went. They wouldn't tell me. But why the integration?" Morgan went to answer. He didn't notice Muzazi silently shaking his head. "Well, don't tell me," Winston snapped with surprising harshness. "In the reports, there was mention that you were attacked by Palte Kojiro. His sword is made of mujang, extremely toxic. Treatment's difficult. Ioneer Yggdrasil healed you. No, is healing you. Otherwise he would have left your body already. He's constantly healing the damage inflicted by the toxin. Wow, that must be nerve-wracking, huh?" Morgan blinked. "What?" "Having a constant war being fought inside you, I mean. I think I'd be stressed out a little if that was me. But hey, everyone's different, so—" "Hey!" a female voice suddenly burst out from the other side of the hangar. "Winston, don't be fucking rude!" Muzazi glanced towards the source of the sound, and quickly found that the source of the sound— what? Was storming towards me when I'm the source of the sound. It was a young woman, her pale blue hair tied back into twin tails, and electric blue eyes glaring straight at Winston. Her clothes were somewhat unusual, a kind of blue war robe similar to Muzazi's, only sleeveless and with a black sash wrapped around the waist. Around that sash, Muzazi could see numerous implements strapped down, throwing knives and smoke bombs from what he could identify. Was she some kind of stealth expert then? Did you just put a ninja in your story?
I did. What are you going to do about it?
I love Aetheral Space. It really is anime as fuck. Only in Hunter x Hunter or other shonen could you see such variety. I love it. I love it from the bottom of my heart. Ugh, Winston groaned, finally getting out of Morgan's face. "Sorry about this, guys. That's my little sister, Beatrice." "What?" You're joking. Wait, how old is Winston again?
He's like 20.
Okay, I got you. Beatrice Grace reached them just as Winston finished speaking. "What did you just call me?" she said, brow knitted together in anger before turning to Muzazi and Morgan. "I apologize for Winston. My little brother doesn't get how to talk to people. We tried to teach him better, but he's a lost cause. Please understand." Wait, are they twins or something?
Yes.
Okay. Don't listen to her, Winston said hurriedly. She doesn't know what she's talking about. He turned to his sister, a very similar expression to hers spreading over his own face. Could you not interrupt? These aren't random people. I know them. I know him. He jabbed a finger towards Muzazi. He's my colleague, actually. We're talking about serious matters. Beatrice put her hands on her hips. You're being a pain! Oh my god, she stole Serena's bit! All women in Aetheral Space have to italicize at least one word per sentence, if you didn't know.
I'm lying.
That's all I know. All women born after 3033 be like, italicize my words. Come on, let's go find Dad. He'll want to see us. Winston waved a dismissive hand. He's not going anywhere. I'm just talking with my good friend Muzazi. Oh my god. What is Winston right now? He has changed so much. I'm just talking with my good friend Muzazi, so... As per usual, Winston's energy was such that one could just be washed away by it. Muzazi found himself speaking up for what felt like the first time in a while. Well, we do actually have somewhere we should be, he said. So... No, you don't, replied Winston. Automatically, it seemed. For a second later, he frowned. Oh, you actually do, don't you? He shuffled awkwardly. Sorry, I guess. Sorry's right, Beatrice grumbled, grabbing him by the ear and beginning to drag him away. You can find them later if they even want to talk to you. Even as he was being dragged off, Winston just crossed his arms, face crunched into annoyance. Don't be such a... What did you just call me? He didn't even say it, but Beatrice's shout echoed throughout the hangar nonetheless. More than a few of the special officers passing through the hangar looked over at the sudden burst of noise. It was followed by another voice from behind Muzazi and Morgan. That voice attracted very little attention. Was that supposed to be attention? Said Aklima. Hello? The girl was wearing her most formal war robes for this occasion. A sword much too big for her small frame strapped to her back. Final Fantasy?
Exactly.
Muzazi had already made it clear that she would not be fighting in this battle. She still hadn't unlocked her Aether after all, but it was best that she be here. Anything else would only lower her ranking further in the eyes of others. Just like with Beatrice, though, Muzazi had almost forgotten that Aklima was there. The reason for it was completely different, of course. Rather than concealing her presence like Beatrice did, it was just that Aklima had very little presence to begin with. That's not what you're supposed to say about your daughter figure, Muzazi. Come on now. She was easily overlooked. Not really something a supreme heir should be. God damn, dude! Beatrice released Winston's ear, the boy dropping to the floor in an undignified heap. My heir, she said politely, bowing slightly. It's a pleasure to meet you. If nothing else, she clearly knows her etiquette, Muzazi thought. Hey, idiot! She snapped down to Winston, kicking him. Greet the Supreme Heir properly! Never mind, Muzazi thought. What is this? This is so funny. Ow, 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 Winston muttered, rubbing his behind as he picked himself up. Yes, of course. Nice to meet you, my heir. It's such a... He looked up past Muzazi and stopped talking. Beatrice went to admonish him, only to follow his gaze and fall silent too. Morgan looked and immediately turned pale. Muzazi furrowed his brow. What? He said. He went to turn around. A hand landed on his shoulder. I'm dead, 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 I'm dead. His body shook violently. No voice would come from his throat. By reflex, he thought he'd abandoned. He reached for a sword that was not at his side. I'm dead. Slowly, so scared that if he moved too fast, he would provoke something. Muzazi looked behind him. He looked at the person with their hand on his shoulder. He looked at the thing that could kill him with no effort at all. I'm dead. A fortress of a man, grotesquely muscular, with so little body fat it was almost inhuman. Light blonde hair, almost golden, cut short with rough hands. What had always been depicted as a wild beard shaved down to a goatee. A wide grin that could have been either malice or glee. A presence that was so omnipotent as to go unnoticed. I'm dead. Oh, God. Hey! Said the Supreme, his booming voice friendly as his massive hand squeezed Muzazi's shoulder. He was looking past Muzazi at the group as a whole. You guys special officers? It's hard to tell, since Caesar doesn't give you any damn uniforms. Well, I guess not having any uniform could be your uniform in a way. Anyway, nice to see you guys show up. You seem like good kids. I'm dead. Nobody said anything. The closest thing to speech was a kind of choking sound that trickled out of Morgan's mouth. Akalima shook violently, her shoes rattling against the floor. "I'm dead." The Supreme frowned at the silence. He patted Muzazi's shoulder slightly, and for a single horrible moment, Muzazi was certain that slight effort would be enough to crush him against the floor. In that instant, he could feel it, an illusion conjured by his mind, his spine snapping, his guts forced out of his broken jaw, his skin flattened and stretched. "I'm dead." "Man!" "Oh," the Supreme sighed. He took his pinky and stuck it in his ear, digging around idly there. "Looks like I went a little too hard there. Sorry, guys. Just wanted to say hi." "Welp." He glanced over to Akalima in a rapid shuddering. "Oh, man, you're freaking out there. Real sorry. I'll, leave you to it, I guess." And with that, the Supreme let go of Muzazi's shoulder and began stomping away. "I'm not dead?" What the fuck? Is part of his strength just that like people instantly assume it's over?
He's just that strong.
But then how did the contenders overcome it?
Because they're strong as well.
Oh my goodness. Does that mean Muzazi's not up to snuff?
He was
This
not
is
ready
so
for it.
sad. I'm dead. The slightest effort. Even with that hope. Did he not recognize his own daughter, by the way?
Might be all written down.
"I'm not dead?" Even with that hope, Muzazi did not dare move. The rest of the group didn't dare move either. None of the special officers or personnel in the hangar dared move. It was only when the Supreme had left the room and the doors had slammed shut behind him that Muzazi dared take a breath. Immediately he collapsed to his knees, and then collapsed to his hands and knees. That was the Supreme? That was the person he hoped one day to replace? On an intellectual level, he'd understood that the Supreme was the strongest. He'd understood that his power was above any other living creature. But there was a difference between understanding it and experiencing it. There was a difference between understanding it and having it slap a hand on your shoulder from behind. It didn't even feel like he'd escaped death. It felt like he died and come back to life. His lungs hurt when he breathed, and there was a soreness behind his eyeballs. All the danger signals a body could produce were blaring through his mind. It was just a few words spoken by Akalima that pulled him back to sanity. "He didn't realize, did he?" she murmured, sad as all the world, looking at the closed metal doors. "He didn't even realize who I am." Muzazi was in no state to speak, but if he was, he certainly would have agreed with her. When the Supreme's eyes had looked at Akalima, they'd been looking at a stranger. How are you supposed to be a good father figure now that you pissed your pants in front of her? You idiot.
This guy, he's never experienced the pressure of the strongest living creature.
Why don't you show everyone the art you made for him?
No.
I think that would give an idea of his pressure.
No. That's it. I'm actually going to direct my killing intent towards you now. We'll have a demonstration.
Is that how he dresses too, with the loincloth?
Right now he's wearing pants.
Okay. Why don't you should definitely draw the Supreme for us in your style, or get someone to draw
I can't
the
draw
Supreme.
musculature.
We should definitely get him commissioned then, because I want to know what he looks like. I'm just imagining Godfrey right now. Yeah. Fucking Yuma or whatever his name is.
That's the sort of physique you should be imagining.
Alright, well, what's your fun fact this week?
Fun fact. I don't have a fun fact.
How did Beatrice become a ninja?
Well, she was always sneaking around as a kid, so she thought she'd take that further when she joins the family business of being special officers.
Okay.
So it just sort of developed naturally.
Okay, so that's the canon. That's what he says, but what actually happened is she figured out what anime was, and she found a series called Naruto. And,
Naruto, believe it!
What's that German opening that we were like...
That's what I'm doing right now.
Sakura, so beautiful,
Regard,
or whatever it was.
He's got some brains. Bruno, he's all deranged. Naruto.
It's so good.
Bruno, famous for being deranged. I couldn't think of a rhyme.
Aetheral Space opening when? That would be so cool. Alright, anyway, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye!